Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast, our first of the new year 2024, which means there has been a lot that has gone on since the recap of the Frisco Bowl and since the calendar has changed from 2023 to 2024. And primarily, we're going to get into a recruiting wrap up because the early signing period, early signing day came and went. The transfer portal window will remain open, and there will still be a lot of movement. And of course, we know, Russ, that there will be another window following spring ball. So there is no way, shape, or form that you can say that the recruiting process is finished for 2024. It ain't that way. We're going to see probably departures and additions all the way up, maybe even till a few weeks before the first game. We've seen that over the past couple of years, but hey, we had a lot of movement for the early signing period. And of course, we've got that killer article over all the transfers in and transfers out over at thundercast.online, which you can keep track of. So we've got a lot to get into. There was some great basketball stuff going on, and I want to talk about it all because it's just been a minute. Been a little over a week, and we usually don't go over a week without having a show. So let's get into it with a quick word from our sponsors at 304carwreck.com. If you've been hurt in a wreck, visit 304carwreck.com on the web or on Facebook. You can't stop a bad driver from crashing into you and making you a victim, but when you're hurt and you try to deal with the insurance companies alone, you set yourself up to be a victim again. Don't be a victim twice. Jason and Matt can't protect you from bad drivers, but they can protect you from the insurance companies. Find them at 304carwreck.com. It's been a minute, and I'm sure there are some things that have happened that we absolutely have to talk about. In fact, I know I've seen some really killer things that have come across the timeline, so don't keep me in suspense any longer. How about 5 things that every Herd fan needs to know to start out 2024?
How about 7?
How about
this week? This week we're going to have 7 things every Herd fan needs to know. This week, as always, sponsored by Ignite Link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, women's soccer has named their coach, and it is Rafa Simoes.
I think that's cool. I don't know that I saw that one coming, right? Because that one kind of fell like he's like, well, we know we need a coach, and then so much stuff other kept happening, like with football and the bowl game, and you were like, hey, we haven't hired a women's coach yet, and then all of a sudden, bam, Rafa Simoes, and you're thinking, hey, we're going to go the Chris Grassy coaching tree for the women's side. And I tell you what, that's not a bad idea because it's been a pretty successful run for the men. So I'm here for it. And I really feels like this is turning into a not so much a men's soccer program and women's soccer program, more so the martial soccer programs, right? It's like the blueprint and the philosophies and kind of making it that one big Herd family that we all like to talk about. I am here for this move, and I think it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, Simoes being on Grassy's staff, if they can have that synergy between the two programs and, try to duplicate what we're doing with the men, wildly successful program right now, nationally ranked year in, year out. If they can duplicate that, this is a very, very good hire. Everyone should be familiar with him, in the athletic department. He should be able to hit the ground running. Won't need to get acclimated to the university, won't need to get acclimated to the town, all that. Lives here. Very good hire.
Yeah, it is. And you think like if you can replicate that, and I know that's a lofty expectation, but from just a scratch the surface standpoint, if you're a soccer prospect and you go, man, look what that Marshall men's team has been doing. And then you go, wow, look at the facility that they play. You probably now entering into conversations with women's soccer prospects that may not have Marshall even on their radar. But you get a guy from a successful program like the Marshall men's program, couple it with the facilities, couple it with the attendance that shows up at those, and the potential for an even bigger crowd support if they can just turn a corner and start being really competitive in the Sun Belt. I think it starts to check a lot of boxes, and you can see that it won't take a lot for some substantial growth from a success standpoint to take place with Herd women's soccer. We thought we would see it a little bit last year because they turned a corner. Remember, a season ago towards the end, didn't really pan out the way we thought. So they say, hey, let's make a change. What better way to do that than to look in-house at your vastly successful men's program and try to replicate that?
Mm-hmm. And Samos does have women's coaching experience. He was with Nova Southeastern, I think the article said, in Ohio. So familiar with coaching a women's team at the collegiate level. Uh, been here with wild success, not just with Marshall, but in the local soccer communities. He's well known. So I think this will be one of those don't need to wait to see some results type deal because he's already here.
Yeah. Now we know that it won't take much to improve upon what we had from a record standpoint last year. It won't take too much to get out of or to surpass those expectations. But you also don't want to go, hey, in 2 years we're going to be, fighting for a college cup. Could it happen? Yeah, it could, because Marshall did that when they hired Chris Grassy. But if coaches that were able to perform to that level of success were just around all the time, then everybody would do it. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say they will be an improved team. They will be an improved program. There's just a certain amount of draw that making the right hire helps. I mean, you see it all the time in football, for example. They hire a coach, and within 2 years, the program's turned around. So it's not necessarily cautious optimism. I think it's just flat out optimism. To be honest.
All right, moving on to number 2, Marshall athletics teams continue to have success in the classroom, and I have that article up here to tell you just about how they are doing it. Cumulative GPA for all athletic teams 3.18 for the fall 2023 semester. Let's see. 8 programs finished with a perfect GSR score. 25 graduated in this semester. I've got other stuff here breaking it down, but flip it over to you for some reactions, and then I'll get into individual team scores.
Yeah, which is always awesome. I love when these grades come out because it's a little bit humbling from a personal standpoint because the overall cumulative grade point average was higher than what I graduated with at Marshall, right? And we talk about it all the time, the additional load that every athlete has to carry with practices and treatments and games and traveling and all that, and I just got to be a college student and do what I wanted to when I wasn't in class kind of thing. And that always makes me feel really good about that academics do play an important role at Marshall. They don't just want to recruit athletes to go out there and produce on a field of play. They also want to prepare them to be successful when their playing careers are over because, just like a lot of high school athletes, they don't play past high school. Well, a lot of college athletes won't play past college either. So it's important that you get prepared for the remaining 40, 50 plus years of your life once the playing time is done. So I love that. But I'm guilty. I went and I looked and I'm like, all right, who had the highest GPA out of all of our programs? And I know you have that in front of you, so I'll let you spoil that for me.
Yeah, first, the GSR's graduation success rate, and here's those 8 programs that had a perfect 100 score. Men's cross country and track, men's golf, women's basketball, women's cross country and track, women's golf, women's soccer, swimming and diving, and women's volleyball. Softball had a 96. Everyone else is above 75, 75 and above. And we had an overall, if you combine all those, we had a 91 overall, tied for first in the Sun Belt Conference. We also had several of these programs, their GPA led the Sun Belt Conference. That's always good to see.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the GPAs, just going to run down them real quick. First, the men's soccer 3.47, cross country 3.42, baseball 3.36, basketball 3.26, golf 3.23, track and field 3.2, football 2.55, women's golf 3.89, swimming and diving 3.81, cross country 3.61, volleyball 3.57, tennis 3.44, track and field 3.36, soccer 3.34, softball 3.29, basketball 3.19.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a lot of really high GPAs,
It
and
is.
you can't short sell that because the results are what they are. You have to
Mm-hmm.
put in the work to get those grades. It seems like our women's sports are crushing it when it comes to academics. And some of the things you do have to take into account, like I'm not breezing over this. Like football's GPA is pretty lower than I'd like to see it, 2.55. But you
Mm-hmm.
also have over 100 athletes that are going into those numbers. So there are
Yeah,
absolutely guys out there that are smoking it in the classroom.
there
So,
are.
but so you can't just toss it all, in there and say, hey, man, you guys got to all do collectively. They have to do better. But there are some guys that probably simply can't do anymore. There are probably some 4.0 athletes on the football team and some Dean's List guys out there, right? So there are some guys that probably need to improve in the classroom, and the team cumulative GPA says that 2.55 is not great. You want to see everybody really get over that 3.0 threshold, but you absolutely can't turn away and say, man, those women's sports are struggling because they're killing it, man. Like
Killing it.
3.8, 3 point, all of them basically over 3.5 on the Dean's List type deal. And, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to do that. I joke about this, but it's true. I made the Dean's List one time, and I was in college for a long time. So I probably could have done it if I would have committed a little bit more, but let's be honest, man. College was, for me, it was a lot more about learning who I was and learning about myself. I think I learned more outside of the classroom than I did inside of a classroom. And honest to God, I feel like that's equally, if not more so important, because I mean, I'm not trying to downplay a college education. It's important, but I don't have a job that my degree comes into play, at all. And I've
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thankful for Marshall. I'm thankful that I went there. I'm thankful that I'm a son of Marshall, and the experience of being there for so many years set forth the course of the remainder of my life, and so much so that I sat here with you and talk about the herd, and not been a student for a quarter of a century almost, so it's played a vital role in my personal life. But um, I can't help but smile when you start talking about 3 point whatever GPAs, because they were always higher than what I had. So, um, huge congratulations to all those hardworking athletes in the classroom, in the library, late nights, and traveling with their laptops and tablets and doing all that stuff on a team bus or a flight or whatever. Man, just kudos to you guys and gals. It's more work than I wanted to take on, at that time in my life. Never mind the fact that I wasn't athletically talented enough to have to do that. But killer numbers. I love it.
Um, Final note on this is 6 of the transfers that we have in football that are in the portal right now. Uh, they walked. They graduated. And just running over those real quick because we're going to talk about it here in a minute. But Marcus Velez, Joshua McTire, Brandon McElroy, Trent Holler, Elijah Austin, all graduated and they
Mhm.
all hit the portal. So it's not just, sometimes knee jerk reaction when you see the portal now is to complain about it. And kids aren't completing their college. A lot of them are, some of them that are moving on, which we're going to talk about, were not on scholarship and they're looking, or they were, but they are getting no playing time here. They want to go somewhere and play. Uh, some of them maybe want to do some graduate program somewhere. And here's 6 that have already graduated from Marshall just from this semester. This
Mhm.
is not saying that there's not more in the transfer portal right now from Marshall that graduated the previous semester or
Sure.
something and was here working on a master's. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's not always about what people immediately point to as loyalty to the program. You know, you can be loyal to a program. I mean, those guys are. They were loyal enough to obtain a degree from Marshall University. So at what
Yeah.
point does the loyalty have you fulfilled that loyalty? I think that's an excellent indicator that you did. You stayed long enough and grabbed a degree and but for other guys you were loyal enough and gave it enough of a shot that it became apparent that you maybe were not going to get the snaps that you wanted to get. So now you're looking for an opportunity to play elsewhere. It's not it's really easy to just say, well, there's no loyalty anymore, but it's not always that way. I mean, we say
Right.
it all the time. Russ, if a company came to you and said, hey, we're going to pay you twice as much. Now I know this is job. We're not talking about NIL. This is a job. If another competitor came to you and said, we're going to pay you twice as much to do the same work, you would strongly consider that, right? I mean, strongly
No,
consider that.
no, I
Actually,
wouldn't
there wouldn't be
consider.
any consideration. You just go.
Yeah. Yeah. Like before they finish the sentence, I would already be, leaving. So,
Yeah.
uh,
So before you just chalk it up to loyalty, there's other extenuating circumstances that are out there. It's not always, well, there's no loyalty anymore. There is some of
sure.
that, but it's not always that.
All right. So, number 3, softball is having the inaugural first pitch dinner on February the 3rd at Guyan Golf and Country Club.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I got a kind of idea what I think it is, but I would love to actually hear more about that because I think that would be if you're a supporter of the softball team, which we know we have a lot of in and around
Hmm.
Huntington. This seems like a neat little event to just immerse yourself a little bit more in herd softball culture. So I would like to learn a little bit about like what's going on there.
Yeah, it says details to come, and they probably will be out soon. But I'm sure that this is just going to be the start of a big fundraiser before the season starts. You
Sure.
have a dinner and meet the team and that sort of thing, and it's fundraiser. It costs money to attend the event. We have those at other, Tip Off Club does it for men's basketball. I've been
Right.
doing it for a while and things like that. So, just another good step to get these championship funds, get more money in them, and onward and upward for all the programs.
Yeah, and these are also just good opportunities to there's a lot of new faces with herd softball this year. A lot. You know,
Yep.
all new coaching staff outside of Allie Harrell. She was there last year, but outside of her, it's all new staff. And of course, everybody that's followed herd softball at all is going to know Morgan Zirkle. I mean, geez, she's like
Hmm.
the greatest, one of the greatest ever to ever play for the herd. But so there's a lot of new players, a lot of new coaches. There's just a lot of new, and that's a good opportunity to uh, support the program and also become more familiar with the program. But I think it would be cool if they had things like I don't know, like raffles and stuff like they do the quarterback club
Sure.
in
Yeah.
Charleston. That'd be great, man. Like
Yeah.
silent auctions and stuff because there's fans out there. You know, we're some of those fans that would love to be able. I would love to be able to showcase like softball stuff right here on in this
Hmm.
hole in my wall, or something like that, or not hole, but blank spot in my wall. So all these sports should be doing this. Because there are supporters that would pay to go. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean you got to do it at the freaking Guyan or at the damn Civic Arena or because but the John Marshall room, they still call it the John Marshall room upstairs.
Far as I know, they've got
Okay.
that new food table program in there, but
Oh yeah, that's right. So there's areas where all of our sports could do something like this to help raise a little funds for their championship. I like it. I think it's a good idea.
all right, number 4, one of those players that I just talked about that graduated and walked, Isaiah Gibson, has announced he is returning for another year.
Yeah, big. That was big, man. Our defensive line, as we get into this later on, and we talk about recruiting, defensive line took a bit of a hit,
Hmm.
and it was a really really big sigh of relief to get that "I'm back," tweet and Instagram post because he's a big part, and he's going to be a big part of the success of the 2024 defensive line without a doubt. He's been a big part of it for the last 2 years, 2 seasons. So I'm really pumped for that. Gibby back, 99, big guy, causing some havoc at the first level on the defense, man. We need that. We needed a guy like that to be back, and I'm so glad he's back.
Yeah, just his size and skill level up the middle for run stopping and everything. He was one of those players that when Coach Huff brought in, he was talking about, we need to have a certain size at certain positions. He's one of those that I pointed at.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
wasn't just him, but there were more. We talked about this before, but previous defensive schemes under Doc, they went with more speed. So you take an outside linebacker and maybe make him an edge rusher, and then you take your outside guys and put them on the inside and bring your safeties up to be linebackers, and had hybrid type players. But some of them were small, and we started having problems with runs up the middle. And Coach Huff's first year here, we had problems with runs up the middle. And you remember that Louisiana bowl game, he said we had 6, I think it was, defensive linemen that made the trip. So that off season, that was a point of contention. Let's get defensive linemen in here, and they were big guys. And you saw that defense just really take hold that year and became an elite unit nationally. And it started with being able to put pressure up front and stop the run up front.
Yeah, and he's going to be augmented by some other guys that, as far as we know, are returning. Right, Tyquest Legs should be back, and there are some contributors that hit the portal that I thought would be back. Because they were productive for the Herd. They might not have been that eye popping stat guy, but having Legs back, having Gibby back is going to be big because we're already looking at, now that Elijah Alston has hit the portal, Owen Porter has exhausted eligibility. Dude, that's 2 premier pass rushers, gone. And we saw some really great things late from Mike Green. So there's some young talent there, and you can start to get we'll have a much better idea of what this defensive line will look like, obviously, after spring football. It's still going to change, but that you can expect a lot of movement. And I don't know where. I can't say there will be, 4 more defensive linemen that will be added. I can't say that, but I can say I know there will be more movement on this roster. There are still scholarships available to be utilized, right? So those are going to be put to use. That. You just can't understate from one guy. We're just talking about Gibby, really. How impactful that will be for the defensive line for 2024, man. We're gonna have it, especially if you're talking about revamping the offense and looking more like an air raid. I mean, think about that, Russ. If it's not working, if you go through a stretch where you can't, complete some passes, those are quick drives, and your defense is going right back out there. And those are real scenarios that probably will happen at times, because no air raid offense just consistently moves the ball all the time. They all struggle and go 3 and out. But those 3 and outs are often really fast because the clock ain't running, after an incompletion most of the time. I think it does now with the new clock rules, unless you're under 2 minutes, but there's still generally shorter drives than if you're running the football. Anyway, huge news out of Herd football from Gibby returning.
Yeah. Other news out, number 5, it was reported on Twitter. Nothing official that I've seen yet, but it was reported on Twitter that Logan Meyer will be moving on and becoming the general manager and recruiting director at Troy.
Yeah, under new head coach Gerard Parker, which we know has strong Huntington ties. I was surprised when I saw that, and you're right, we haven't seen anything official. It was basically just a retweet of a Football Scoop article. But we liked Logan, man. He was good to us, and it sucks to see him go, if he does in fact go, because he had a nice effect on Herd football. He was a go-getter, and he was in charge of recruiting and player personnel and stuff like that. So he was a good one, So
Yeah.
that falls on those guys that go often unnoticed. So many people hang hats on who's the this coach, who's the that coach, and those support staff guys that fly under the radar have been so important for Marshall in the Coach Huff era. And he's had some fair amount of turnover because he keeps bringing in good people, and
Mm-hmm.
and they become sought after. So
Yeah.
we saw that with Vodler. He was here and gone, and then Meyer now potentially. So it leaves a void that has to be filled. And there are plenty of great candidates that are out there. And these guys like Huff know who they want to get. They know the type of personality they want to have in those roles. So if Logan is indeed gone or will be gone, I obviously wish him nothing but the best because he was always great. And we met him a few times, and good dude. So I wish him nothing but the best. But on the same token, now you got to turn around and hire another rock star, man.
He did tweet out that there was some big news
Yeah.
coming for him. So you kind of expect that
Hmm.
this is true. Football Scoop usually does a pretty good job on those sort of hires. Number 6, speaking of football, we have the staff additions. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. They have now been named. Aaron Dobson will be elevated from his analyst position to wide receiver coach. Bob Shoop elevated the same to safeties coach. Cody Creel comes in from Incarnate Word as the offensive line coach. And DC Jason Seymour will also coach linebackers now.
Yeah. I can't say that I'm completely surprised by Seymour also coaching linebackers because that's what he did at previous stops at Georgia Tech for sure. And of course, we've talked about him being the DC at Valdosta State, but he has
Mm-hmm.
experience coaching at linebackers. And I think that we've seen DC's coach a position group before. And I don't know. We've also seen Marshall have corners coaches and safeties coaches as two different things before. And that
Mm-hmm.
looks like obviously the route we're going to go again because, well, uh, that's what we have. The most intriguing thing is Bob Shoop because he was an analyst last year with Marshall, but he has got a really really impressive resume. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you've looked at it, or I doubt really anybody has probably dug deep and looked at it.
I
But
have.
he started his coaching career way back in the late 80s as a GA with Yale, but it's consistently rising the ranks until you get all the way up to 2014, wherein he was the defensive coordinator at Penn State. And then
Left there, went to Tennessee.
took the job, left there to be DC at Tennessee, and then left there to be DC at Mississippi State, then safeties coach at Michigan, down to the U as a defensive analyst. Then 2 years ago, defensive coordinator at South Florida, also safeties coach there. Then he goes to I can't remember if it's the XFL or USFL, whatever, whichever one it is.
Birmingham.
Yeah, but Birmingham Stallions, he was the DB's coach there, and before landing at Marshall last year as an analyst, and now going to be the safeties coach. So, geez, man, Bob Shoop has forgotten more about football
Mm-hmm.
than most people will ever know about football. So that to me is, that's one of those where you go, wow. I mean, how often do you see former defensive coordinator, Penn State, Tennessee, Mississippi State, is position coach at Martin? The wealth of knowledge there is off the charts,
And we
Then,
know that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm going to go on to a different coach. So if you have something else
Okay.
about Shoop, let's have it.
Yeah. You just know that Coach Huff is very familiar with him because 2 of those stops coincided with his time there as well. Coach Huff was there at the same time at Penn State and then later at Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
So he should be very familiar with him and what he knows. So if he's elevating him up to a position, and we got a former defensive coordinator at high level
Yeah.
places and safeties coach or defensive back, whichever it was at Michigan.
Yeah.
We've got a wealth of knowledge, like you said, here at that position.
Well, safeties coach also while DC at Penn State. So
Yeah.
again, this might fly under the radar as just a regular hire, but it could be this amazing get. When you look at that coaching tree, you don't just forget how to coach defense.
Right.
And then let's talk about Aaron Dobson, because that made me feel good, right? Because Aaron's been here, done that, and he knows a thing or two about playing wide out.
Mm-hmm.
Obvious. But aside from just being a Marshall all-time great, several years in the league, right? In the NFL, Patriots and Cardinals. And so he's been at that level too. Young guy. So he has that certain vibe that you want to be able to relate to those players. But aside from all that, he's a West Virginia guy. He grew up in Dunbar, South Charleston High School, areas that are super close to Huntington. You're talking 45 minutes down the road. So when that guy drives down the road and goes back to the Charleston area, he's known. You know what I mean? And recruiting and things like that, aside from being a position coach, that's an automatic influencer when you talk about recruiting locally. Automatic. I loved it though, because he breaks into the coaching ranks last year. I remember he was like, well, we're going to start this new venture, and first year in, good job, analyst role. Now you get elevated your first full-time assistant coaching job. I love it, man. You got to love it. You got anything like particular that you want to say about Aaron being hired before we move into the last one?
No,
Okay.
no. You hit all the notes on there.
Cody Creel for me is a coach that I'll be honest, I'd never heard of, right? Because there's so many coaches, you just can't know them all. But when you see it and you start going and digging back into the resume a little bit, this is another one that seems like it might be a big home run. And I'll tell you why. This kind of lends to the whole thought process of we're going air raid in 24. I don't know that we will fully. There could be some hybrid element to it or whatever, but Cody Creel used to be the offensive coordinator at Incarnate Word, right? And I know a lot of folks might go, big deal. Who cares? Well, go back and read his profile from Incarnate Word, and it talks about the passing records and the offensive records that they set under his tutelage, and for completions and yardage and touchdowns. Let me get this: season records at Incarnate Word, including total offense, total points, and touchdowns. All right. So isn't that exactly what you want in Huntington? You want those type of numbers to be pumped up. I mean, I know our season records for all those things are really impressive, and it's hard to sit back and go, yeah, we'll break all those, because it's unlikely that you will. But we've said it before. You get to that 30 point per game threshold, you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to win a lot of football games. So you got Seth Dagey coming in to be the offensive coordinator. You're bringing in a defensive safeties coach that's been a defensive coordinator at high level schools. Now you're bringing in an offensive line coach that was an offensive coordinator at a high flying offense in the FCS ranks, among other places, by the way. He's been a head coach at like some junior colleges and things before. But man, this staff is starting to take place, and I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse, but boy, it's starting to get really exciting, of what's potentially on the horizon here. Of course, it all has to work. You got to get the right players and the right scheme, and it's all got to work, and then you have to execute and all that. But you can't do any of that until you get the right coaches in place that's going to get the most out of the guys you bring in. Feels pretty good. Got to be honest. I think two of the announcements yesterday, if you dig deep into it, you're like, wow, these are potential super home run hires. And you also think, wow, Aaron Dobson's probably going to be a pretty good hire too. So it got quiet for a while. I just like to think that they were waiting for the calendar to flip around to 24 before you kind of make the news, because that's what happened. But boy, oh boy, excitement's starting to build.
All right. Our number 7 and final thing is that we have some transfer portal news. We are going to have this probably every week or every show that we're going to be doing this. And when our show came out last time, we had some players announced later that day. So here's some that we have brought in. Elijah Ellis, offensive line from Baylor, 6'6", 307, offensive lineman. Braylon Braxton, quarterback from Tulsa, 6'3", 222. And his receiving mate, Carl Chester Jr., 6'4", 195-pound wide receiver. So those are three that came in. We had a few that left. By the way, I'm getting this information, KD. Where am I getting all this information from?
I'm going to guess at thundercast.online, by the
That's
way,
right.
with the unbelievably accurate transfer tracker.
Yep. Pretty proud of this thing. I try to stay up to date on it. But let's see here who we had going out. Uh, Elijah Alston was on. We had him listed the last time. John McConnell, we had him listed last time. Mason Pierce, we had confirmation during the show. So not sure that we really talked about that enough. So since then, Eric Meeks, offensive lineman, he was center, backup center, I think. Then Jalil Rivera Harvey, defensive line, played all 12 games. Jack Shearholtz, quarterback, and he won the scout team award this year, but didn't see any time, obviously. He redshirted. And Marcus Velez, tight end. And he is one of those guys that graduated that we talked about, and he has 2 years remaining, so he's a grad transfer in the portal. So that's it.
Early on, we saw a bunch of guys that were looking for an opportunity, right? The walk-on guys, the buried in the depth chart guys. And then after the fact, a little bit later, we started seeing guys that were impactful players for the Herd in 23. And particularly after the bowl game is when we really saw some of those, like Holler was gone before that, but Elijah Alston, then McConnell, so there are some guys now that make you go, ooh, that's one you got to replace, that kind of thing. But I can't fault them, and specifically like somebody like Jack Shearholtz. You're sitting back and you're thinking, damn, they've just brought in 2 quarterbacks. Well, what's that going to mean for me potentially? Well, let me see if, there's a better situation out there. I don't fault any of these guys. I really don't.
Sure.
It's the nature of the beast. It's always going to be that way now, and it ain't never going to change. So I say this all the time, and I believe it to be true. Anytime you have a transfer out, that to me is an opportunity to just get better. It doesn't mean if a quarterback leaves, you go get another quarterback and get better. It just means that's a roster spot that's now open. Somewhere that's an opportunity to improve your roster at any position because a roster spot has opened. That's just my take on it. And it helps me deal with some of the guys that hit the portal that I wanted to see return. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I look at it. Other folks choose to look at it like there's no loyalty in sports anymore, and that's fine. There's not, but who cares? That's the way it is.
How many years in a row have I said, we cannot celebrate the people that are coming in and bemoan the fact that people are leaving?
That's right.
One, that's hypocritical, of the transfer portal, or your take on the transfer portal. You can't just, think that you're just going to keep bringing people in. Two, there has to be a roster spot to bring these people in. Mm-hmm. So it's just the natural flow of how it is. Also, the transfer portal is a relatively new term, and it's been more defined with, exact dates and such things. But transfers have been happening since the start of college football, the modern college football era. Think of NFL player Troy Aikman. He was at Oklahoma and UCLA. Moss came here from Florida State. There is a long history of people transferring. That's not new. It's just they have a defined opening and closing of this window, and they're calling it the portal. So this isn't something that is just, oh my God, they're letting us have transfers now. It's been happening forever,
Well, it has, but it's different. I think what people don't like is that you can just now transfer multiple times without any, before you had to transfer and sit, and I didn't think that was fair either. But there should have just been stipulations. It's like, all right, you recruited by this coach and your relationship with this coach, that coach got fired. Well, you should be able to transfer, right? You should be able to, at that point, do something. But I don't like the fact that guys can go in and transfer like 2 and 3 times now, and that's sucks. That's when you get on into a like, what are we doing here? Like,
And that could be overturned because they had tried to limit that to where you had to sit a year on your second transfer unless it was a situation where your coach left, and then it was ruled um, by a judge or something that, hey, you can't do that. So
yeah, of course.
maybe they go in and they try to get that fixed somehow, and in a year or two, it'll go back to where you have to sit. I don't know, but whatever it is, if we are not taking advantage of the rule and we're just saying, well, I don't like the portal, so I'm not going to participate.
Oh gosh.
Pe- People are leaving and you don't bring anybody in. Uh, I think Coach
Recipe for
Huff,
disaster.
yeah, I think Coach Huff embraces that. I don't want to say more than other schools because I think nationwide it's just become a facet of the game now. You have to do that in
Yeah,
your recruiting and all that. You have to have so many transfers in because you're losing upperclassmen. You don't want to just bring in all high school kids and have them, wait a year or two before they get their bodies ready to play at this level.
yeah,
So I think that we do a really good job of it, though,
yeah.
bringing in.
Well, we do, and again, I'm just going to go back and say, like, I think most people's gripe with it is being able to transfer multiple times, and you also toss in the NIL to where it basically just becomes free agency, and that just
Yeah,
rubs people the wrong way. And there are some things that could be done to mitigate that. Will it be done? Who knows? But for the here and now, we have to play the game the way that it's outlined. And if you don't outlined, and if you don't, then you're just going to fall farther and farther behind, and then you're just putting yourself in a tougher road to win ball games, right? And that's not what you want to win. So you might as well play the game that the way it's outlined right now. So do it. If you don't like it, kind of tough. Would you rather not like how the game's played and win some games or lose? And that's kind of what it feels like. But luckily, we do get to talk about some players. Right? Our feature story this week is we're going to do a recruiting wrap up for the Herd, and we talked about portal out guys and the great freaking article that's up on ThunderCast.online. If you haven't found it yet, if you haven't gone, you got to go. The link to ThunderCast.online is in the description to all the episodes, and if you click it, it's basically the first article that's up, so you'll see it. And you can keep track, even if you haven't been keeping track. They're all right there for you. But
it's
early,
actually the second article now
oh,
because
is it?
Trace's article is up
Oh,
top
yeah.
now because it's more recent.
Which, by the way, let me talk about that real fast.
Yeah,
If you didn't see it, Trace Johnson, our good buddy, ranked all 19 of Marshall's starting quarterbacks of the FBS era. That's important. 1997 to the present. And if they started at least one game, they were ranked. That's how it works. And this is his personal ranking. It has nothing to do with how Russ and I see it, right? This is all Trace's thing. He wanted to do it. So we were like, yeah, man, do it. And it's been a mixed bag of how it was received. Of course, nobody's going to agree on everything, and some people think that some guys are terrible and deserve to be in last place and blah blah blah. But you got to understand that you can't rank a guy dead last just because you don't like him when he actually went out on the field and was a multi-year starter for a number of games and actually won games for the Herd over a guy that maybe started one or two games. It just doesn't work that way. So if you're interested in that, go check it out because I think Trace did a great job. I think he did a really, really, really good job. It was well thought out. He went and did the stats dive and everything.
yeah.
So very well constructed article.
I can tell you it would have been extremely hard for me to write that article. I enjoy writing articles like that, but to compare a couple of players that both had two starts, I mean, only
Sure.
two starts, and it's almost like it's unfair because, that might not have been indicative of their talent as their placement on this list or whatever. Um, but you have to put them somewhere. Someone has to be 19, someone has to be one, someone has to be right in the middle.
Sure.
And when you look, what I think a lot of people weren't really getting, it wasn't clicking for them, was Trace was putting their longevity was weighted up there. So if they were a starter for 2 years, like you said, no one is sitting here saying this is the talent 1 to 19. No, it's the results, kind of. So if someone was at the very bottom, I think the last three, 17, 18, and 19 had 6, 7, I think, combined starts.
Right.
You know,
And that's
Eh,
barely over half of a season versus somebody
yeah,
like Chad, for example.
yeah, sure.
But it was just a really neat idea. I'm glad he wanted to do that. I'm looking forward to most of those. And I think we're going to, let me go ahead and break a little news. I think he's going to do a series, and
Hmm.
it's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be the same like ranking of all 19 because there are so many guys, for example, that you couldn't go back and calculate who all started a game at running back. It would be in the 50s probably. But I think he's just going to start doing maybe his personal ranking of top whatever number he chooses of the FBS era. And
Hmm.
that is going to be really, really cool to read. There's going to be, I kept seeing this too. Man, what a great trip down memory lane. I'd forgotten about some of those quarterbacks.
Yep.
And we're going to get to do all that again with running backs and tight ends and wide receivers and defensive ends. Everybody. I think he's going to do a series through the offseason. So when those articles go up, or when those articles get completed, we'll do the same kind of thing. I might do a teaser with a couple of them, and then we'll link the whole article so you got to go check it out. But I think this is going to be a great bunch of content to get us through the off season
Yep.
while we talk about recruiting and all that good stuff. So
And final note on ThunderCast.online, it is not just all football articles on there. However, right now it has been kind of dominated by
mhm.
football articles on there. So if anyone that is a listener or viewer of this show wants to write for ThunderCast.online, just reach out to us. DM us at the ThunderCast Twitter, or message us if you're Facebook only. We're over there, and just say, hey, I'm interested in writing. What we're not looking for is someone to try to compete with Luke Creasy's coverage from the Herald
Right.
Dispatch, because you'll lose. Luke does an amazing job,
Mhm.
but we're not looking for a beat writer. We're looking for stories. One of the stories that I wrote on there was when a family hits the transfer portal. And it was the Haller family when Trent came here from ECU. It was like, tell us what all that was like, and I think that's a really good article that's over there. So just different articles of being a fan of these sports. So if you have a sport that you want to write about, hit us up. Maybe it can work out.
Yeah, yeah. We're just looking for the fan point of view for whatever you want to write about. As long as it's appropriate. Content type stuff. But we welcome creative folks that want to just scratch that itch a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about some recruiting, Russ. Early signing day came and
Uh,
went. Like I said, we know that there will be another signing period in February, and then we'll have another portal window at the end of spring ball. So there's a lot of movement that's still going to be underway, especially after spring when the depth chart becomes a little clearer, and it becomes actually, I should say, it becomes clear to guys that realize they're going to be buried far enough that they need to try to find another, place per by. Um, but for now, we had a whole lot of portal in guys. We had a decent. Well, actually, we had about 50-50 portal in and high school recruiting guys. Let me go down. You talked about the guys that left. So without the guys that graduated, we know there's the holes are bigger at certain areas, but just the portal out guys. We had 28 players currently as of today when we record that have hit the portal out. And again, does not include guys that graduated, guys like Dalton Tucker that graduated, Owen Porter that graduated. We know that's a hole at offensive line. We know that's a hole at defensive end. Portal out, 28 players. There were 3 quarterbacks, including the starting quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers hit the portal, including 2 starters, 3 tight ends, including 1 starter, 5 offensive linemen, including 1 starter, not including Dalton Tucker. 6 defensive linemen hit the portal out, including 1 starter and 2 guys that were high production type guys. 2 linebackers hit the portal, 2 corners, 1 safety, and of course, John McConnell, the punter, all hit the portal. So that kind of gives you an idea of where some of these holes needed to get filled initially. Also, you have to take into account that there are rumors swirling that the Herd is going to run a completely different style of offense. So we know that's got to plug some holes, or got some holes that need to be plugged with how you recruit. Namely, a revamped wide receiver room is a big deal because a lot of guys left. The production wasn't that great. Plus, you got a new system coming in. It's a lot. So let's talk about it. Portal in guys, Russ, there were 12 currently right now. And will it surprise you? Probably not, to know that it is weighted heavily towards the offense. 11 of 12 are offensive players. Okay. Only one defensive guy. And let's talk about him first. It was defensive lineman Jason Shuford, 6'4", 322, comes over from East Carolina. The remaining 11, all offense. A pair of quarterbacks come in the portal class, and you mentioned one earlier, Braylon Braxton, 6'2", 222, comes from Tulsa. The other is Mitch Griffiths, 5'11", 193, comes over from Wake Forest. So a lot of competition for, I guess you would call him incumbent starter Cole Pennington, because he was the last one to start a game for the Herd.
Yep.
One running back in the class so far, Jordan Houston, 5'9", 180, comes over from NC State. Then a quartet of wide receivers. Christian Fitzpatrick, 6'4", 220 from Michigan State. Tyshawn Chapman, 5'9", 175, comes over from North Carolina. Elijah Metcalf, 5'9", 170, comes over from Middle Tennessee. Aforementioned Carl Chester from Tulsa, 6'3", 202. One tight end comes over in the class, Justin Holmes, 6'3", 237 from Kent State. And then three offensive linemen, Jeremy Jones, 6'5", 314 from Tulsa. So yes, that's three players from Tulsa, a quarterback, a wide receiver, and an offensive lineman. Offensive lineman Barrett Maddox comes over from Vanderbilt, 6'6", 281. And the aforementioned Elijah Ellis, 6'6", 307 from Baylor. Russ, thoughts really quickly on this 12-player, 11 offensive player portal in class from the early signing period?
We're going to look 100% different than we did this year. I have mentioned a lot on this show. Cam Fancher was a lefty. We have no lefty. In fact, Shearholtz was also a lefty, and he transferred out. So everyone that was brought in was a righty. We're going to see, it's just different,
Yep.
when you have a left-handed quarterback. We are bringing in some speed, smaller slot receivers, and we are bringing in some tall outside receivers. It's looking like that air raid is with what we already have here that is remaining in the wide receiver room, plus the tight ends that we're going to have, not just the tight end that we brought in, but the tight ends that we have returning. We are going to have a lot of aerial weapons, and it's almost like, I don't know that it will be this way, but it's almost like you have enough that have starting experience from either here or that has transferred in from other schools, that it would almost be like that hockey style sub everyone out, sub everyone in type deal. I'm not saying that's what we would do. You just have that depth. It's the same thing I said about the defensive line coming into this year or last year. Bringing in all of these players, not to mention the high school kids from the offense, it's just going to look top to bottom different in our offense. And I think with the struggles that we had last year, that's a very good thing.
Well, first off, it's going to need to look different because it wasn't very potent last year. It was at times, but outside of really Rasheen Ali, and when Cam was healthy, it looked a lot different, right? But by and large, the vast majority of the season, it was inconsistent. And that's fair to say because we saw it all play out. We scored points and we looked great in games, but week in and week out and stringing together a month worth of offense, it wasn't like what I would consider very consistent. We saw great games at NC State, but also a lot of turnovers. We saw really great performances here and there, and individual performances were great here and there. But as a team concept, it wasn't great.
And going up tempo. We saw great success when we were able to do that. And then at other times we saw trying to go tempo, but you would have a false start or a
Yeah.
hold or,
Yeah.
a couple of incompletions, and then that stalls your drive, and tempo did nothing except for get your defense back out with 35 seconds of rest,
You're right. So that's where something like a Cody Creel, who has been a pass heavy offensive coordinator before, is really going to pay dividends from your offensive line because, well, he knows how to set those guys up to block effectively for an air raid type offense, right? We know because it's not the same. It ain't the same. And it needed to be different. So let's talk about the high school guys coming in real quick. 11 players signed from the high school ranks in the early signing period, a little bit more balanced, though still leaning to the offensive side. 6 offensive guys, 5 defensive guys. So let's talk about those 6 offensive guys. First and foremost, you bring in another quarterback. So 3 quarterbacks in this class. And of course, it's longtime herd commit Jaquai Long, 6'2", 210, coming from Hurricane. I'm going to give you a little couple of extra data points for these high school guys. I'm going to give you their 24/7 sports overall rank in the state, and then their position rank in their state to give a little context to what we're doing here. So Jaquai Long comes in, 3-star prospect, number 7 overall prospect in the state of West Virginia, the number 1 quarterback in the state of West Virginia. Running back Moses Gray Jr., 6'1", 205 from Wagman, Louisiana, 3-star guy, number 59 overall recruit in the state of Louisiana, number 2 running back. Wide receiver Marcel Williams, 6', 190, comes out of Hollywood, Florida, 3-star guy. Overall prospect in the state of Florida, number 217, but he's the number 30 wide receiver. And I know that you're like, man, that's a pretty high number. Really? We're talking about the state of Florida and a skill position guy. They go pretty deep. Wide receiver Riley McIntosh, 5'11", 180, coming out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, 757 guy, 3-star 49th overall prospect in the state of Virginia, the number 7 wide receiver in the state. Then you got tight end Aiden Steinfeld, 6'4", 250 from Bloomington, Indiana, 3-star guy, number 17 overall prospect in the state of Indiana, and the number 1 tight end. Then the another offensive lineman is part of this class, so that'll be 4 as of now. Andrew Hancock, 6'5", 300 from Youngsville, North Carolina, another 3-star guy. Number 39 overall prospect in the state of North Carolina, the number 5 overall offensive line prospect. But to break that down a little bit more, they separate them on 24/7 Sports from offensive tackle and interior offensive lineman. He's an interior offensive lineman, and he's the number 2 interior offensive lineman coming out of North Carolina in 2024. 5 defensive guys. Cornerback Corey Myrick, 6'3", 185 from Cincinnati, if you remember, 3-star guy. Number 52 overall prospect in the state of Ohio, and the number 5 corner in the state of Ohio. Then 3 defensive line, very defensive line heavy in this high school class from the early signing period. Started off with Chris Stokes, 6'3", 305 from Dallas, Georgia, 3-star guy. Number 239 overall in the state of Georgia, but the number 26 defensive lineman. Then we'll go to Cameron Chimura, 6'3", 300 from Wexford, Pennsylvania. 2-star guy, number 60 overall in the state of Pennsylvania, but the number 8 defensive lineman. Defensive lineman Michael Lunsford, 6'3", 270. He's from Milton, Cabell Midland guy, 3-star prospect, number 4 overall in the state of West Virginia, and yep, number 1 defensive lineman in the state. And then close it out with linebacker Chasen Clark, 6'2", 200 from Stark, Florida, 3-star guy, 189 overall in the state of Florida, but the number 13 linebacker in the state. That is a killer list of guys, particularly talking about getting the number 1 at 2 positions in the state of West Virginia. That's awesome. Yeah. Number 1 defensive lineman, number 1 cornerback or quarterback. That is great. I mentioned before, just quick notes, heavy offensive focus so far. 17 out of 23 overall prospects are on the offensive side of the football. Russ, we're going to look different from an offensive standpoint. What's most surprising to you? Let's talk about the high school guys. What are you getting a feeling of here? We know it's really early and there's a lot of developmental stuff there. Is there a guy that might stick out to you that will get some solid playing time in 24? Could be an instant impact guy, just a knee-jerk reaction?
No, there's not for me, because I never know how to to view someone that's coming in straight out of high school. Um, but what I will say is when you compare their height and weight on here, a lot of these are already at those numbers that you would like to see.
Sure.
Well, let me talk about that first. Defensive line, you got 6'3", 305, 6'3", 300, 6'3", 270. I'm missing another one there, aren't I?
No, not in the high school ranks. There's
No,
only three.
yeah, three. Okay. And then offensive line, 6'5", 300. Um, One thing about that huge size already, you got a tight end 6'4", 250. That's a
Mhm.
huge size already. You've got a defensive back that's 6'3". You know, how
Yeah,
much did we talk about that before? Is, going up for the jump ball. You're not having a 5'9" guy on a 6'3" wide receiver. You're having a 6'3" guy on a 6'3" wide receiver. Also got a linebacker in here at 6'2", 200. You've got a lot of height and weight around where you want to be. But that first year, let's say their weight stays the same. Coach Huff talked about it before coming into this season. The body composition of that 6'5", 300. That offensive lineman may put on 15 pounds of muscle and shed 15 pounds of fat. That's going to be a drastically different 6'5", 300 than what he
sure.
is right now. So these high school kids, even though they're already this size, once they get into the nutrition and the weight room that they're going to have here in college, their composition is just going to change. The level of competition that they're playing is going to change. So I wouldn't be surprised to see all of these players sit and redshirt and just get a year in the weight room, a year getting acclimated to college life and the speed of the game, that sort of thing.
Yeah, admittedly, I don't know if any of these high school guys are going to be early enrollees and be there for spring ball and be able to go
Mhm,
through, B with BA, because that's
mhm.
huge. They get that
Yeah,
that that that's huge. If you can get that jump start and get the spring program and have him abuse you for an entire spring, you really get a leg up on the rest of the guys that aren't early enrollees. You just do. There
yeah.
are some guys that are probably mostly going to sit, but if I was looking for maybe if you had one, it's like, yeah, I could see this guy getting some game. If I had to pick one, I would think it may be the tight end Aiden Steinfeld, right? Because we did use a lot of tight ends, and we're going to be a different offensive look. But even in an air raid, it helps to have as many tight end weapons as you can get, both for blocking and for receiving. Yes, Toby Payne should be back and be healthy. Cade Conley tore it up, before he got
Yeah.
dinged up late in the game. So there's some weapons there, but the departure of Sean Salas leaves a weapon to be filled, right, at the tight end
Mhm.
position. Steinfeld coming in as a guy that's number 17 overall in Indiana, number one tight end, looks good. Could be a guy. Could be a guy. I don't know. But if I have to put my finger on one, I'm just going to say him because like the build, I like the production there. His brother was also a tight end I saw earlier in the season or earlier, not in the season, but he hit the portal. He was at Indiana when they had the coaching change. He hit the portal, and I don't know where he is, if he's committed anywhere else yet. But
Mhm.
that seems to be what the Steinfelds do. They play tight end.
Yeah.
Um, but there's so much movement. Again, we have a great start here, a great start, and there's going to be guys that are going to separate. There are going to be guys that do not meet expectation. There are going to be guys that are currently on the roster that will be looking for a new home because they're being outperformed, right? And they want to play. So this is where I get to use the term cautiously optimistic when you talk about recruiting, because there's a lot to be done. I do have on. I have this feeling that not only just saying we ain't done, as in, of course, recruiting doesn't end, but I mean, I want that for you I want to say that to you and you to go, yeah, like we ain't done, as in it's gonna get better, not just we're adding numbers. It's like I think there's still some, oh man, how did that happen? Additions to this recruiting class that are coming, you know.
I'm expecting when you have this was the early signing period. I feel like in February there's going to be a couple of more surprises, but I expect in the portal, I look for us to take another quarterback. And it would not shock me to it be a grad transfer type deal where they have 1 year to play. Um, I think competition is going to be good for everybody.
Yeah.
I would love to see Cole the entire year here, but I also am not going to say, well, it's got to be Cole and we'll just get some backups brought in here. I think that
Whoever
it's
is the
going to
best
be,
has got to win.
yeah,
That's how it
that's
is.
that's exactly right. Whoever is going to do the best for the program is who we want to see on the field.
Yeah.
And I would expect to see, now that we've kind of front loaded with some offense and everything, and we've seen a couple of defensive linemen leave over the last couple of weeks or whatever, I would expect to see more defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs just really amp up that defense from the portal. That's just a gut feeling that I have. I don't have any inside information. That's just me looking at what we brought in so far and saying, well, there's still some need to bring in some depth here. So I figure that's what it's going to be.
Well, I'm also going off of the history and track record of
Mm-hmm.
recruiting under Coach Huff, and he's told us before, like there are some guys that we just ain't going to announce until we can
Oh,
get.
yeah.
There are certain like it's either got to be on campus and participate with the team, or he's got to sign like a financial aid agreement, right? Like a scholarship
Right.
agreement or whatever,
Yep.
and then they have the freedom to announce, because up until that point, they can be poached right away. You can get your
Yeah.
commitment, but somebody can swoop right in and take them. So it behooves you oftentimes for those holy crap, how did this happen prospects to not say a word about them until you can get the ink dry on the paper. Then
But
you can say it. As bad as we as fans want to know
yeah.
everything as soon as it happens, it's not what's best for you as the fan at the time, because the guy could announce a commitment and be gone.
Well, you remember what he said on this show about ad drop. It's that they could be here and enrolled
Mhm,
even, and then they could drop the classes that first Friday. Usually,
mhm.
they could drop all their classes, and then they could just go be a late enrollee somewhere else or miss spring somewhere else and go enroll and be there for the summer. Um, you can't, even when they enroll and sign, they could still drop out.
Right.
They are not signing a letter of intent as that is binding, as Coach Huff said on this show. It's just a different animal.
Yeah. And you also have to take into account there will be guys that will graduate in the spring who will
Hmm.
then be grad transfers, and they aren't now, but they will be at the end of the spring semester, so you could add them during the summer, right? Recruiting doesn't quit. So if you look at this class right now, you can be really excited about it. You can be like, wow, we're really off to a good start here. But what you can't do is pretend like the book is closed,
Yeah.
because it ain't closed.
And I haven't looked, but I imagine there might still be a coaching position open out there that would change someone's mind, from the high school ranks, and someone that's already at that program.
Mm,
A new head coach comes in and their old coach is leaving. We had all kinds of different scenarios where someone just got their coaching position in January or February. Uh, you've got players that might get beat out in spring and realize, hey, I'm not going to be able to play here. So then they transfer over the summer. We've picked up a couple of players over the summer the last couple of years. So yeah, we are not done, and I just have a sneaking suspicion that we're probably going to go after a quarterback still, and I would expect more defensive players to come in,
yeah,
and a
I would
big
also
defensive lineman.
I would also expect a larger emphasis post early signing day on defensive players. It also kind of surprises me that we know the great Rasheen Ali is done at Marshall. We know that now, and that's not speculation. That's a thing. He's not transferring. He's going to the Shrine Bowl, and then he's going to make his run at the league, right? So it was a little surprising to me that they only hit one running back in the portal, and they bring in another one in, because we saw Ali go, and then two others hit the portal. So that means overall you're -1 if you're trying to keep the same numbers right now. So that's another area where I'm like, okay, who's going to be out there that's like a really good pass catcher out of the backfield? Like you got it. They also can't just use all their ammunition right now because, like you said, you don't know who else is going to be available. You've got to keep some things in your hip pocket for some things that may fall into your lap or some targets that you would really like to go after, in the spring and early into the summer. So I know we are not done. And I also feel like what we saw in 2023 and even to a large extent in 2022, it's not going to look like that in 2024. You're always going to, because there's only a few options you can do on offense, right? You can either run the ball or pass the ball. That's basically it. So you're always going to see that, but we're not going to look the same. So for all the folks that griped about fire this coach, fire that coach, and this, that, and the other, well, you got your wish. We're going to look different. So now it falls on us to see what it's like, or just like deal with what it's like. I hope it comes out of the gate like a well-oiled machine and Marshall goes from a 20 point per game team to a 35 point per game team, because next year's the expanded playoff, right? Now's the time to get right. I mean, damn, you go on a run now and you're game changing. You're not worried about a New Year's Six. You're going for a playoff spot. So I'm there for the ride. I don't know about you, but I'm there for a ride.
Oh, I'm always here.
What else we got?
That's it. We're going to take it around the herd.
All right,
You ready
let's
to
do
do
that.
that? All right. Swimming and diving. They have a meet coming up on Friday. It's in Athens. They're going up to Ohio. Then they'll be back here at 1 p.m. on Saturday hosting Bowling Green for another meet. So Athens is not too far away. It's a good little town, good little trip. So if you got nothing to do or you're up there in the area already, why don't you head on over and support Swim and Dive up there, and definitely try to do that on Saturday here. I'm going to try to get the kids together and go over and watch that on Saturday just because they've never been to a swim and dive event. So
Cool.
they're having a good season so far, and they deserve our support.
Get a little
So I'm
support
going to,
out there.
yeah. Women's basketball, they dropped a close one. This is way back on December the 21st. That was the day the episode dropped, the last one that we did. They dropped a close one at Wake Forest, 66-59. They were actually up going into the fourth quarter. A couple of foul shots made that at the end look a little bit wider of a gap than it was. But playing at Wake Forest, that was a really good game. Then they opened conference play with a win at Southern Miss on December the 30th, 87-72. Looked very good start to finish in that game. Just running what we have come to know, running people to death off the court. A lot of depth that we have. We never give anyone a break. KD, what do you call it?
The most relentless 40 minutes in basketball.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're going to get when you see them play. They're going to be hosting South Alabama on Thursday at 6 p.m. and then Arkansas State on Saturday at 1 p.m. So I'm going to try to do both games, the basketball and the swim meet. I won't be able to see all of them because they're at the same time, but it's what I'm going to try to do with the family, get them over there to see a little bit of both of that,
Yeah.
both right there in the CAM and the Gullickson complex,
Well, they got a nice little 2-game stretch at home, so a little early weekend at home. So a couple of sets of tickets will be going up for grabs. Just keep track of the social medias whenever they go up. And hey, man, go check out the most relentless 40 minutes in basketball. Do you happen to have those national rankings up? Because
I can get them
I mean,
really
if you
quickly.
don't, that's okay. But if you guys missed the graphic that the Herd Women's Basketball account put out, it was some of their Sun Belt rankings and national rankings in various categories. Things like steals and points and turnover margin and all that kind of stuff. And boy, oh boy, they are living up to the hype. You got it right there?
I've got them. This is the Sun Belt first. Let me go
Okay.
with this. Leading the Sun Belt in these categories with these stats. Number 1, points per game, 85.3. Number 1 in steals, 14.75. Number two, offensive rebounds per game, 16.1. Number one, 3-point field goals made, 8.9 per game. Number one in turnover margin at plus 7.92,
Jeez.
almost 8 turnovers a game. Um, let's see. Number two in assists per game, 15.8. That was the Sun Belt where they listed, but here's ranking nationally. Nationally,
Nationally, 300 and some programs.
number two in steals at 14.8 a game. Number 17 in offensive rebounding, 16.1 a game. Number 25 in 3-point field goals made per game, 8.9. Number three in turnovers forced at 24.58. Number 12 scoring offense. And they're the number 11 in turnover margin at that plus 7.92. Again, nationally.
All in season one.
Mm-hmm.
All without a complete like couple of recruiting cycles to fill the roster top to bottom. Now, the
Yep.
players that stayed are rising to the occasion. The players that
Mm-hmm.
came in are doing exactly what we thought they would do, right? I'm not going to say they're exceeding expectations, but man, they are absolutely meeting expectations of what we
They're
thought we
definitely.
would saw. And if they go on a run, it only matters now, right? It matters now. They've got the quality win over Florida under their belt. They went nipping at the heels of Wake Forest on the road. So now it's what matters. You go run through the Sun Belt, and there's some good teams in the Sun Belt, right? Like Georgia Southern is 11-2 on the season. Old Dominion is 9-2. James Madison's 9-4. I mean, these are good teams. Marshall's 7-5, but it was early struggles. Remember, they were sub 500 team for a while. And now it's starting to click. And if they can keep that run going and go toe-to-toe with some of these teams, notch some of those wins against those teams that we're looking up at the standings right now, man, at the end of the season, you might go, absolutely, they exceeded expectations from season one. But let me tell you, you got to get out and watch them. We sent some fans to the games, last time they were at home and they hadn't gone to a women's basketball game in a long time. They were like, that was awesome. I want to go back. I want to go see them again. All these top rankings and statistical categories across the Sun Belt, it just tells you're going to see relentless smothering basketball that's up and down the floor. And by the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, there's not very many teams that are going to be able to keep pace with the herd like we can do for 40 minutes. You're just going to outpace and tire out teams and pull away. So unless the shots aren't falling, you're going to go into every game thinking we've got a legit chance to win every game that's on the schedule. You just have to feel that way with the style of play that they put on the floor every night, right?
Yeah, and reminder that we have not played many home games. We have done this 7-5 largely on the road. So now that we're getting into conference play, should be a little more 50-50 home and away. I think that they are coming into their own at the perfect time, which is what you would always hope.
Yep. That's what you want. I mean, of course, you want them peaking in late February, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you've got to play well enough leading into that to notch a decent matchup in the conference tournament, right? But I'll take them not peaking, but I'll take them leveling up now, because damn, it's pretty cool. Like the way they're playing, what we thought we would see, we're actually seeing, and so often you have an expectation and your expectation doesn't get met. You don't see what you think you're going to see. And that's not what's happening here. We're seeing what was advertised. You're getting that. So go to the games, go to the cam. We've got tickets. We'll send you. It's something we want folks to see because again, you go once, you'll probably go back and it's really, really cheap. It's not like a $25 ticket. It's like a couple of bucks, man. So this is the perfect thing to do if you need a cheap night out for the family. You want to take a couple of kids and go have some dinner and just do something cheap or skip dinner and just go to the game. You can get in and out there for probably $20 or something like that.
Yeah, my kids eat $20 a kid. They got to have everything from the
that falls on you.
Concession stand. Yeah, I'm a sucker. All right, Men's basketball, they lost at home also back on 12/22. So this has been a while back. But home game, UNC Wilmington, very good UNC Wilmington team, by the way. They beat Kentucky earlier in the year at Kentucky.
Yep.
We lost 78-69. And for a lot of that game, we were right there ahead or right neck and neck with them. Then we beat Louisiana at home on December the 30th, 75-61. Never trailed in that game. Got off to an electric start. Saw some really good play by Nate Martin. Obina just continues to kill it from three and is just doing it on the boards. He's doing it everywhere. And I would really like to see what our record would have been had he got to play down there in the Cayman Islands Classic. He missed all three of those games. And anyway, we have done a lot better than we have done earlier in the season. Again, going into conference play, which you like to see. They're playing Louisiana Monroe tonight in Louisiana. That's 7:30 Eastern time. And then they will travel to Texas State Saturday, and that is at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, heard so far 6-8 on the season, and you're right. If Obina makes the trip to the Cayman Islands, it might be a flip flop of that record. I mean, you don't know, right? But you cannot dispute that not having him on the trip was impactful to the overall performance of the Herd. It was.
He's the leading scorer, and he's right there neck and neck on rebounds. And it's just the minutes that he's playing during the game. He just changes the game having him on the court.
Yeah, it was really great to go toe-to-toe with Louisiana and get that win. That's become a fun little pseudo rivalry from a basketball court standpoint based on the games last year. That was really good last year down in Lafayette, and to get them this year up in Huntington feels pretty good. You've got a 2-game swing, and then they're finally back at home for 2 games starting on Wednesday the 10th and then Saturday the 13th. Of course, we'll have tickets for those. Georgia Southern will be the first one. They are struggling, but that is – I don't like playing teams that are like that. I mean, Georgia Southern's 1-12, so if you lose to them, you're like, really? You know what I mean? Let's get going here. Louisiana Monroe's 4-7. A great opportunity to get a win on the road tonight. Then it'll be kind of a mirror image type game against Texas State. Be a nice little matchup for Nate Martin, if folks remember, because he was at Texas State last year. So I'm sure he's got that one circled, wanting to do really well against his former team. And then you get the little quick home stretch where we'll have tickets. But both basketball programs turned a bit of a corner. Women's more so than men's, but the men's also turned a corner. And we're seeing really consistent play. I still think there's some scorers that need to find a bit more consistency to make the Herd a little bit more of a tougher out when you have to play them. But you can't get mad at what Obin is doing. You can't get mad at what Nate Martin's doing. You know, there's just some guys, if more shots start falling, the Herd's going to start winning a little bit more. But, man, I can't say I'm mad at it. Not mad at it, you know. Being on the cusp of being a 500 team. They could be an 8-8 team at the end of this weekend. And if you look at that, go, all right, 16 games in, they're 500. Could have been way worse when you talk about Kenzie gone and Andy Taylor gone and Logden gone. Those were big pieces to fill. We're finding our way. We're figuring out how to fill them. Hey, we knew it was going to be a little bit different than last year. It's actually a lot different than last year. What's left?
That's all I've got for Around the Herd this week.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. So get out to the basketball games, win the damn tickets, go to the games. That's what we provide them for. Is there anything else that you can think of off the top of your head that may have happened that we haven't talked about? Because I don't know. There's just been so much. It feels like some things were years ago. But I would like to remind everybody about we talked about this in the last episode. We did the feature with the Dugout Club, right, in the baseball. So go check out the Dugout Club and see if you want to get involved with that. And of course, I'm going to bring it up again. We secured our season baseball tickets, and we're going to be giving away tickets for all baseball season. Just wanted to throw that out there again because spring sports are spring sports and tickets are tickets, man. So if you got nothing else, dude, take us out of here.
Yeah, so whether you see us at the Cam, whether you see us at the Joan, or whether you see us down at the Natatorium to watch swim and dive, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd, sell the towels. It's the ThunderCast. We'll see you next week. Later.